Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, the chapter that we are going to read is Memories of Childhood, and you are basically going to get few stories where you will find that some sort of discrimination was done. There are like the stories divided into two parts, so I'll be recording two parts in separate videos. First will be for the first, and second will be for the second part. So now let's start. This unit presents autobiographical episode from the lives of two women from marginalized communities who look back on their childhood and reflect on their relationship with the mainstream culture. So we are going to talk about two women here, and we are going to talk about their childhood, as the name of the chapter suggests, memories of childhood. So this title of the chapter, childhood, we are going to talk about the childhood of two women as they reflect back how the society had treated them, what was the culture at that point of time, and how they were affected by that culture. The first account is by an American Indian woman born in the late 19th century. The second is by a contemporary Tamil Dalit writer. So you have got the two women here also. The first one is an American Indian woman. That means she has been an American also, though she was born in India. And the second one is a writer, and she was a Dalit writer. So probably you can understand from this only that something related to caste would be there in the second part. Gertrude Simons, born in 1876, was an extraordinarily talented and educated Native American woman who struggled and triumphed in a time when severe prejudice prevailed towards Native American culture and women. As a writer, she adopted pen name Zitkala. So here, Zitkala is not a real person, but she has just chosen a girl with the name. So this is the first women that we're going to talk about. She was a Native American woman, and she has gone through a lot of prejudice, and she has trumped. Trumped means won, and prejudice means bias, like discrimination we were talking about. So she has won over this prejudice, and she has narrated one of her incident, like childhood incident, and that complete story she has narrated through this character. The story belongs to her, but she has represented or reflected it through Zitkala. And in 1900, began publishing articles criticizing the Kutch Indian school. Her works criticized dogma and her life as a Native American woman was dedicated against the evils of oppression. So these Indian school in America and in other places, they used to impose things, though they were Indian school, but they used to impose American style of living. And she wanted to oppose that. Bama is the pen name of a Tamil Dalit woman from a Roman Catholic family. So now the next Dalit writer we were talking about, her name is Bama. Again, it's a fictional name. She has published three main works: an autobiography, Karupu, a novel, Sangati, and a collection of short stories, Kisim Bukaran. The following excerpt has been taken from Karupu. Karupu means palmary leaves, which with their serrated edges on the both sides are like double-edged swords by a felicitious pun. Tamil word Karupu containing the word karu, embroy, or seed also means freshness or newness. Now we'll start with the first thing from the main character, Zitkala. The cutting of my long hair. So some kind of oppression was shown here that we're going to read in the chapter. The first day in the land of apple was a bitter cold one. So they're talking about a place that is commonly known as the land of apple, and it was a very bitter one. Bitter cold means it was really cold temperature there. For the snow still covered the ground. There was snow all around, and the trees were bare. There were less number of trees. Bare means less. So there was more of snow and less of trees, and that place was known as the land of apple. A large bell rang for breakfast, its loud metallic voice crashing through the belfry, overheard and into our sensitive ears. So now you need to understand that Zitkala has been sent to a boarding school from her parents, okay? And this boarding school is not in India, it is outside India. And the very first thing that she notices is that there is a place known as belfry. Belfry means where all the bells are used. And there is a large bell that rings, and it is a sign for the breakfast. The annoying clatter of shoes. Annoying clatter means when you move, legs and there is an unusual sound that comes. That is the clatter shoe. Like clatter is the sound here. On bare floors gave us no peace. The constant clash of harsh noises with an undercurrent. Undercurrent here means background of many voices murmuring an unknown tongue made a bedlam within which I was securely tied. And though my spirit tore itself means she was fighting for herself. Unknown tongue here means language that is not known. So first thing was that she heard some clatter of shoes and that noise was really annoying. Similarly, there was a large bell that rang for the breakfast and some people were murmuring. That means they were speaking very slowly in a language which was unknown. That means it was a foreign language. And bedlam here means confusion. It created a confusion and she was not able to understand what is happening. And then, though she was not liking the environment, she was fighting for herself. She said that everything was useless. Maybe she's not liking the environment of the boarding hostel. A pale faced woman, pale here means yellow, with white hair, came up after us. We were placed in a line of girls who were marching into the dining room. So now they were going to the dining room. There was a line of girls. They were going to the dining room, and the line was headed by a pale faced woman. These were Indian girls in stiff shoes and closely clinging dresses. Now you can say that they were all Indian girls. They had gone to the boarding school and they were wearing very stiff here means tight shoes and clinging again means body fitted dresses. The small girls wore sleeved aprons and shrinkled hair. As I walked noiselessly in my soft moccasins, moccasins are like you can say the padding is of very soft, like very soft cushion kind of slippers. I felt like sinking to the floor, for my blanket had been sinking to the floor here means embarrassed. For my blanket had been stripped from my shoulders. Now, what happened? She was just watching the Indian girls there. They were wearing tight, body fit clothes. They were wearing short dresses. So basically, she did not like watching those girls in the similar manner. And when she was wearing a small blanket like a dupatta or something, a shawl, the shawl was taken up from her shoulder. That means it's a kind of disrespect. Now she has to wear the dress as the boarding hostel people wanted. So she says that I really felt embarrassed. She felt sinking to the floor when a blanket was taken away. I looked hard at the Indian girls who seemed not to care that they were even more immodestly dressed. Immodestly means in a very poor manner. I in their tightly fitting clothes. While we marched in, the boys entered an opposite door. I watched for three young braves. Three young brave means young boy. Okay. So now this line of girl had already entered, and then she saw that there were three young boy who also came in the room. I spied them in the rear ranks, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. So even those three boys are very uncomfortable as the Zitkala. A small bell was tapped. Now, first there was a larger bell, and then it was a small bell. And each of the people drew a chair from under the table. So basically, you can understand that there were some rules. On the basis of each bell, they were supposed to do something. For example, on the first bell, they would make a line and attend the auditorium or the hall. And on the second hall, they would pull their chairs from the table. That is what is taught. A proper discipline is taught in the boarding school. So when the second bell rang, everybody pulled the chair from the table beneath the table. Supposing this act meant they were to be seated, I pulled out mine and at once slipped into from one side. But when I turned my head, I saw that I was the only one seated and all the rest at our table remained standing. Now, what happened? She was not sure about what this gesture meant. The second bell that rang, it only meant that the students were supposed to take or pull the chair out of the table. They were not supposed to sit. But because Zitkala was new to the environment, she immediately pulled the seat and she sat on it. But when she looked around, nobody sat. Just as I began to rise, looking shyly around to see how chairs were to be used, a second bell was sounded. So she quickly stood up. She felt very embarrassed and then she started checking everyone that when they have to sit. Then again, there was a bell. All were seated at last and I had to crawl back into my chair again. So after that, again, a bell rang, a very small bell. You can see the third bell. And then they sat. I heard a man's voice at one end of the hall and I looked around to see him, but all the others hung their heads over the plate. Now, there was a man who was standing in one corner of the room or the hall and he was speaking something. So Zitkala was new. She turned her head to see who is that man, where is that voice coming. But rest of the people, they only had their eyes on the plate. Like everyone else did not turn back because maybe they were used to. They knew who that man was, but because Zitkala was new to the environment, she looked, she turned. As I glanced at the long chain of table, I caught the eyes of a pale-faced woman upon me. So after all this, she could actually feel that while she was turning back, there was a pale-faced woman who was constantly staring at Zitkala. Immediately, I dropped my eyes, wondering why I was so keenly watched by the strange woman. The man ceased his muttering, and then a third bell was tapped. So what happened now? Zitkala, when she saw that the pale-faced woman was staring her, Zitkala removed her sight from there. Like she turned her head because she was not able to understand why that woman is staring at her. And then she immediately dropped her eyes, wondering why the strange woman was watching her. Now the man stopped saying anything. He stopped his conversation. And then again a third bell was tapped. Everyone picked up his knife and fork and began eating. Now that means on the first bell, they were supposed to enter the room, make the lines. In second bell, they were supposed to pull their chair from the table. And on the third bell, they were supposed to sit and eat. So everybody picked up their knife and fork and began eating. I began crying instead. Now, why is she crying here? Crying here means everything was so new. See, when you are at your home, you do things as per your convenience, your comfort. But when you go to some boarding schools or another place like that, things do change. Like you don't feel like there are so many restrictions imposed onto you. But this eating by formula was not the hardest trial in that first day. So eating by formula means that there was so many processes involved in eating. First, you have to pull the chair, then you have to pick the fork and knife, and then you have to start eating. So it was difficult for her, but she says that it was not the only thing that was difficult. Late in the morning, my friend Judevin, so now Zitkala's friend is Judevin, she gave a terrible warning. Judevin knew a few words of English and she had overheard the pale-faced women talk about cutting her long hair, heavy hair. Now, this was one thing that had scared her. Second thing was when her friend Judevin heard that same pale-faced women, and because Judevin was able to understand a little bit of English, so when she heard the other women, she heard that the women is planning to cut their long hair, and probably she wanted all the girls to have boycott hair, as most of them were already having it. Our mothers had taught that us only unskilled warriors who were captured had their hair shrinkled by the enemy. Shrinkled hair means cut. So now, see, there are many traditions and customs in everybody's families and places. So one culture, one tradition here was in Zitkala's family that only those people who are covered or who are unskilled, they let other people cut their hair. Right? Only the enemies can cut the hair of those people who are just not able to fight with them, who are losers. So she knew that her mother had taught her this thing. Among her people, short hair was worn by mourners and shrinkled hair by cowards. We discussed their fates some moments, and when Judevin said, we have to submit because they are strong. So now there was a small discussion between Judevin and Zitkala. And the conclusion of the discussion was Judevin said that we have to surrender to them because they are strong people. We cannot resist them or oppose them. But here, who was the rebel who opposed? It was Zitkala. No, I will not submit. She said, I will not surrender. I will first struggle. I will try to escape. I watched my chance, and when no one noticed, I disappeared. I crept up the stairs as quietly as I could in my squeaking shoes. My moccasins had been exchanged for shoes. So now she got this chance, and while everybody was having their food, and when she completed her food, quietly she skipped that hall. She moved from the stairs. Crept up means she was not walking very fast because if she had walked very fast, there could be some noise from her legs. Now, you may say that you only told us that she was wearing moccasins. So moccasins are very so soft. So how could they make noise? But you can read here that those moccasins were exchanged by the shoes that already made noise. So that is why she had to walk very slow and she has to literally creep so that the noise would not disturb. Along the hall, I passed without knowing whither I was going. So she passed the hall, but she was not sure whether in which place she was going to. Turning aside to an open door, I found a large room with three white beds in it. The windows were covered with dark green curtains, which made the room very dim. So there was a room that she entered, and it has three beds, and it had green curtains. They were dark curtains, so the light that entered the room was very less. Thankful that no one was there, I directed my step towards the corner farthest from the door. On my hands and the knees, I crawled under the bed and hurled myself in the dark. So you can see in the picture also, she very quietly moved to the room at the corner, and then she hurdled herself, like she's hid herself under the bed. Now, why she was doing that? Because she had heard Judavin saying that your hair and my hair will be cut. So she was trying to avoid that. This is a struggle. From my hiding place, I peered out, shuddering with fear whenever I heard footsteps nearby. So she was really shuddering with fear, that she was nervous every time she heard the footsteps. Though in the hall, loud voices were calling my name, and I knew that even Judavin was searching for me. I did not even open my mouth to answer. So now, when she was not found in the hall, everybody was shouting her name, and she was able to hear. Even she heard the voice of Judavin, her best friend, but she did not answer because she was trying to save herself. Then the steps were quickened, and the voices became excited. The sounds came nearer and nearer. Women and girls entered the room. I held my breath and watched them open closest door and peep behind last trunks. Someone threw up the curtains, and the room was filled with sudden light. What caused them to stoop and look under the bed, I did not know. I remember being dragged out, though I resisted by kicking and scratching. In spite of myself, I was carried downstairs and tied fast in a chair. So initially, there was no one in the room. People were only calling out her name. They were searching. But unfortunately, some of the girls, they entered the same room in which Zitkala was hiding. And they started opening the curtains. So now the room was no longer dim. It had good light. And then they started opening the cupboard. They started searching the table. And finally, they looked under the bed, and there they found Zitkala. So they dragged, like they intentionally tried to push Zitkala from the bed, but she tried to oppose. But there were so many people, and Zitkala was only one. So it was very easy for them to forcefully take her away. I cried aloud, shaking my head all the while until I felt the cold blade of the scissor against my neck and heard them gnaw off one of my thick braids. So finally, the thing that she was trying to avoid has happened. She started crying. She was shaking her head that no, I don't want to get my hair cut. But finally, they chopped her thick braid. Then I lost my spirit. Lost my spirit means now she was helpless. Now she cannot resist. Since the day I was taken from my mother, I had suffered extreme indignities. This means that when she was with her mother, she was treated very nicely. But since the day she has left the home, she is facing indignities. She is facing disrespect. People had stared at me. I had been tossed about in the air like a wooden puppet, and now my long hair was shingled like cowls. In my anguish, I mourned for my mother, but no one came to comfort me. Not a soul reasoned quietly with me, as my own mother used to do. See, what happens is you have to understand this paragraph in this way. Whenever you are at home, you have people to look after you. You have people to talk very nicely to you. You have people who understand your emotion, right? Now, what is she trying to say? That everything that her mother does, it was only her mother. Because when she came out of the house, she never found that calmness. She never found that understanding that her mother had with the people that she was encountering now. Things were very different. She said that my mother used to do so many things, not even one thing I have seen from these people. It was only my mother who used to really take care of me and understand my emotions. For now, I was only one of many little animals driven by a herder. So, how were they treating her? This is a very deep statement. Like you must have seen herder. Herder is a man who takes control of many sheep around, right? So he commands the herd to move in a particular direction, so the sheep have to follow the command of the herder. So this girl is actually feeling like as if she's one of the sheep and she's being governed by a herder. So now this second part I'll be explaining in the second video. Till then, keep sharing, keep subscribing my videos. Thank you.